100 words sum up the first 7.5 chapters of Esther? Okay, how about 25 words? No, nobody wants to try. Okay, here it is. You ready? Mordecai hates the Jews. Esther became queen. Mordecai hates the Jews. Haman hates the Jews. Esther becomes queen. Haman hates the Jews. The Jews are put up to be murdered by Haman. Haman loses his life. The Jews get to defend themselves. Okay? The Jews are not likable people for some reason, right? Throughout history, not likable people for some reason. And many people, for whatever reason that it may be, just don't like them. Other than they're God's people, and that's probably the answer that we need. So Haman was not an exception to this. He didn't like him either. But what was his reasoning for not liking the Jewish people? Right, exactly. Because nobody would bow, because Mordecai would not bow down to him. So we've kind of gotten into chapter 8, and tonight, where we closed out last week was a reminder of a couple of things. One, that we know that Haman lost his life, right? That Haman was hung, and that he was hung on the gallows that he himself built for Mordecai. And we know that that the king has given everything that he owned into Esther's possession, and Esther turned that over to Mordecai. We know that there is we know that there's a decree that's still out there that cannot be changed because of the laws that are there. So how do you fix a law that you can't override or abolish? Make another one. Okay? And that's exactly what happened. They made another one. So let's look at chapter 8, and let's look at verses 7 and 8. Okay? Let's listen to what we're going to be reminded of what happened to Haman in verse 7, and then this new decree that is there. And it says this: So King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given the house of Haman to Esther, and they have hanged him on the wooden gallows because he had reached out with his hand against the Jews. And then verse 8. Now you write to the Jews as you see fit, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's signet ring. For a decree which is written in the name of the king and sealed with the king's signet ring may not be revoked. Okay. Does that sound a little eerie to something else that happened a little bit prior to this? Didn't something very similar to this happen before? But who wrote the edict, though? And Haman, what was Haman's basically blanket edict that he could do? Right, wipe out the Jews. So now the king is doing this again. He is literally saying, hey, here's a paper, here's the pen, here's my signet ring, do whatever you want to. Okay? So either he hasn't learned from the first one, or doesn't care about the first one. But I think more importantly, why do you think he did it this way? Because who did he really love and care about? Esther. Who did he trust, make right decisions? Esther. I don't believe from when you read through the text that you see Esther with a vengeful heart, right? That she wants to get vengeance, she wants to get protection for her people. And I really believe that when you look at this and you see this, that you can be reminded here that that he trusts her to make that decision along with Mordecai, because he is as part of this conversation as well, was he not? Okay, so this is what we see. Or king, I think, that who sees a little bit differently than what he saw when Haman came in and said, hey, we got to get rid of some people who don't bow down, to live by their own set of rules and all that. Okay, and so now we see this. So here we see something. So if you go down, if you would, to me, look at verse 9. It says, So the king's scribes were summoned at that time in the 3rd month, that is the month Sivan, on the 23rd day, and it was written in accordance with everything that Mordecai commanded the Jews, the satraps, the governors, and the officials of the provinces, which extended from India to Cush, 127 provinces, to every province according to its script, to every people according to their language, as well as to the Jews according to their script and their language. These were pretty smart people writing this script, okay? They were very smart people. You guys understand how big this kingdom is? Okay, I want to read it to you again. I want you to see this, okay? I don't have a map to go up here and just write it to you, but I want you, if you would, to picture. I want you to picture India. Okay, you got India way over here, and you got Kush way over here. Okay, Kush is in Africa. Okay, and now you have from India to Africa. That area there, that they're in control of. And so he is setting out this decree that is there. Now remember, Mordecai is the one writing it. Did you catch that when we read that? Mordecai is the one doing this. We also know from previous experiences that this law can't be changed, so they better be very careful in how they write it. Okay, because they could find themselves, potentially in trouble. So they knew that something had to be done to fix this terrible law, by the way, that the king didn't write, but he might as well have, because what did he do? Right, he signed it. May as well have written it, okay? Okay, so now we see this here. But isn't Mordecai trusted by the king too? Yes. Mm-hmm. Now let's go back for a second. What type of a role did Mordecai play in the life of the king?
Saved his life.
Okay, he saved his life. He didn't play a direct role, right? He didn't play a direct role, but it's more of an edge role on the outside, if you will, for now up until this point. How did the king find out it was Mordecai that saved his life?
Esther.
No? Okay. Right, he was reading, because he couldn't sleep, remember? He was reading history of what happened, and he simply asked the question to Haman, what? Do you remember what he asked him? Hey, has anything been done for the person that saved the king's life? Remember, and Haman's head got about this big, right? About this big, and he's like, oh, the king's going to watch it. The king loves me, he loves me, and all this. And ended up being, he had to lead Mordecai around the royal city, right? So they need to be very, very careful here. So, in verses 7 and 8, you're going to find the Jews are given permission to defend themselves. Up until this point, they were not given permission to defend themselves. Right? They were just going to be animals to the slaughter, literally, just get slaughtered because they weren't allowed to even defend themselves. Okay? Now, let's see here, as we look at this here, look at verse 11 of chapter 9. Oh, excuse me, chapter 8. And it says this. In the letters, the king granted the Jews who were in each and every city the right. Now, that's from India to Kush. Okay, every city that's there, and every city the right to assemble and to defend their lives, to destroy, kill, and eliminate the enemy army of any people or province which was going to attack them, including children and women, and to plunder their spoils. All right. Now, if you go back for just a moment to chapter 3, please. Let's go back there for just a moment, and I want you to look at verse 7. Okay, we're actually going to look at verse 7 and then again at verse 12. And it says this, in the first month, which is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, that is the lot, was cast before Haman from day to day and from month to month until the 12th month, that is the month Adar. Now go to verse 12. And he goes on here and he says, then the king's scribe were summoned on the 13th day of the first month, and it was written, just as Haman commanded to the king's satraps, to the governors who were over each province, and to the officials of each people, each province according to its script, each people according to its language, being written in the name of the king Ahasuerus and sealed with the king's signet. So Haman is doing what here? He is making sure that all of his I's are dotted, all of his T's are crossed. Every language received this decree across the whole kingdom. And now we see this. And I want you to write this down somewhere if you like, that the whole process that we see from where we just read of chapter 3 to where we're at here in chapter 8, okay, takes about 2 months time. Covers about 2 months time, okay, that they are this is taking place. So the original decree is out, and we find how big, how big this area is. And again, the decree goes out. In fact, in chapter 3, verse 15, it goes out pretty quickly. It says, chapter 3, verse 15, what we read is, the couriers went out, speeded by the king's order, while the decree was issued at the citadel in Susa. While the king and Haman sat down to drink, the city of Susa was agitated. So how quickly did this decree go out? Immediately. There was no hesitation, was there? There was no hesitation whatsoever. So these people here are going out. Now I want us to take a view. Just when we were reading through there, I find it interesting. I want us to pay close attention. I want to read this. I want to read this to this. I want to read this again to you because I want you to. It's important to listen to what happens here. In chapter 8, verse 9, it says, "In the letters the kings granted the Jews who were in each and every city the right to assemble and to defend themselves, to kill, to destroy, kill, and eliminate the entire army of any people or province which was going to attack them, including children and women, and to plunder the spoils." Did you find that who's covered in that group? What groups of people are covered there who are going to attack the Jews? Anybody. In fact, the army could have even potentially been involved here because if you remember, money was offered up, right? So we can see a potential complete disaster of what is taking place here. Okay, so we're 2 months in. The decrees have been separated by about 10 days. So the decrees aren't 2 months apart, but the whole beginning process is about 2 months apart. So now we're sitting about 10 days from the decree of Haman wanting to kill the Jews to Mordecai and Esther and Haman all have Haman losing his life, right? And Esther and Haman being able to write these decrees. But I want to spend a little bit of time here. I want to go down a little bit further. I want to spend some time looking at what the Jews got to be able to do. Okay? So if you stay there in chapter 8, go down to verse 12. It says, "On one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, on the 13th day of the 12th month, that is the month Adar, a copy of the edict to be issued as law in each and every province was published to all the people, so that the Jews would be ready for this day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers, hurrying and speeding by the king's command, left riding on the royal relay horses, and the decree was issued at the citadel of Susa." So this was moving pretty fast going out there. Now, it's interesting here. The Jews were given the authority to use any force necessary to defend themselves, right? Now, also when you read this, depending upon how, as you look at it, when he says there that the Jews have a right to assemble and to defend their lives, it also says they have a right to destroy. They have a right to kill. But here's what's interesting. If you read this, it says they have the opportunity to destroy the entire armies, even if the army's not doing anything. It didn't say if the army was attacking you, did it? So the Jews were allowed to go on the offensive and not be on the defensive. Okay? Because they had to take out their enemies. They couldn't just sit back and go, you know what, they're not going to get us till tomorrow. Let's just wait. But when we read further, and we'll get to it in a little bit, but when we read further, you're going to find, and we will find, where the people get it, the people and this army taking place, that they're going to get an extra day, okay, to do this work. So we see here the Jews are given permission to defend themselves. Verses 16, it says this: "For the Jews that was light, joy, jubilation, and honor, in each and every province and in each and every city, wherever the king's command and decree arrived, and there was joy and jubilation for the Jews, a feast and a holiday." Now I'm going to stop right there. We'll get to this last part of that verse in just a moment. Okay. All right, so now we're seeing here the original decree that actually, when it was given, it had what type of effect on the people? The original decree. Horrible. They were panicked. They were in sadness. What I would be through way if they're going to come kill us, right? Okay, but now we see the complete opposite. We see what? Complete joy. Okay, we see complete joy. So again, how do the Jews feel? Okay, how'd they feel about this new edict? They loved it. Right? They loved it. Now let's talk about something else. Now I'm going to read the rest of that verse. And many among the peoples of the land became Jews. A little bit of fear will do that to people. Okay? All right? Because of the dread of the Jews had fallen on what? Them. All right. So that we have now gone from kill the Jews to the Jews can defend themselves to people becoming Jews. How do you become a Jew if you're not a Jew by blood? By what? By beliefs. Right? How you live your life. Right? Denouncing all these other, the other religions that you might have in your life. Right? This is what you see taking place here. This is like, now some of those people maybe thinking, I might become a Jew so I can save my life. It's possible. But it's also possible that the people saw that God was on their side. And I don't know about you, but I would much rather be on God's side than on the good side of God than the bad side of God. How about you? Okay? So now we see that over and over again, God winning the battle. God winning the war. And here we see this with the people. We see this over and over again. They went from panic to being excited to all these things. So let's talk about Mordecai for just a little bit, okay? Now Mordecai always sat every day at the king's gate. Remember, that's how we heard of the plot. Okay, and remember, what type of clothing was he wearing there for? Was he wearing? Do you remember? Sackcloth and what? Ashes. Because remember, Esther even took his clothes and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Okay, you can't be having that kind of clothes on in the presence of the king, right?" So now what we see here is in chapter 8, but I want you to go to verse 15. Okay, and it says this: Then Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in a royal robe of violet and white, with a large crown of gold and a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Susa shouted and rejoiced. You think they got a little bit excited about Haman? You think they liked him? Mordecai, you think they liked him? Why would they like him? Let's face it, I don't know about you guys, but the odds of us meeting the mayor of Indianapolis is slim to none. Right? Okay? And trust me, I've met him. You're not missing anything. But all of a sudden, Mordecai is seen by the people. And the people are like, look at him. Look at him. Royalty with what? Power. Power given to him not by the king, but by God. Now we can say, oh no, the king gave it to you. Listen, God's hand is over everything, right? And so here, this is what we see happening here. The people are so excited and honored, and they're so happy about being able to see this thing. It's amazing when you think about it, how many over the years everybody wanting to kill the Jews. Okay, I want to ask you a question. Why do people want to reject Jesus? Before you answer that question, I want you to think about something for just a moment. Did Jesus go around hoping that people would reject him? No. Well, how did Jesus go around? What did Jesus do when he went around?
Preaching hope.
Okay, preached hope. What else did he do?
Healed.
What's that?
Healed.
Healed. What else? Fed him. Well, you guys are all thinking positive here. There's some negative things he did according to the Jewish people. Straightened them out. There was only one God. What else did he do? Rose people from the dead, healed, fed. He did all kinds of things. Did he ever say to someone that you can remember, did he ever say, no, I'm not going to help you? In fact, the woman who was, remember what the woman who was begging that speech says, even the dogs get a lick off the floor, right? And Jesus, so Jesus still took care of her. Hey, I want us to think about this for just a moment. Now, the world only sees the Jesus that the church portrays, or that you and I portray. The world, in many, many cases still to this day, they look at Jesus through the eyes of the Crusades. They look at Jesus through the eyes of what Christians have done. Right? And the reality is that Jesus never did one single thing out of spite, hate, any of those things. I can't say out of anger because he kicked the people out of the temple out of anger, okay? But not the kind of anger that most of the people think of. But the reality is that here is Haman. He was only doing what? Looking out for the best of the people. And they saw it. I mean, think about how many, do you guys realize that many, many people, the first time they ever step into church is generally because some sort of an event took place in their life. Marriage, child, lost a job, lost a loved one, moved to a new city. And so, why are they drawn to churches and when those needs are there? Why? Maybe you're one of those people. Why?
Looking for that hope.
Yeah, that hope. Exactly, Carlos. That hope. That somebody can give me peace. Somebody give me happiness. Somebody can give me that emptiness. Fill that emptiness that's in my life that I feel. And yet, for so long, all people want to do is kill the Jews. Kill Christians if they can get away with it. And they do it all over the world. More Christian martyrs have been taking place in our lifetime than even can be counted. And it's amazing that these people, how many people just want to kill the Jews simply because they do good things. Oh, and they don't understand history. Right? They don't understand history. Israel didn't start the war in the Middle East right now. Do you guys realize that, right? Even though the media wants us to believe that they started it. They didn't start it. They never finished it to begin with. When you read your Bible, guys, that's what happened. They never finished it to begin with. And yet, that people hate the Jews. It's amazing that thousands and thousands, but yeah, you guys know they're always trying to do peace in the Middle East, right? Carlos, you've been over there. Others I know have been over there. And you guys know that people get mad at the Israel, and they say, well, there's these people where they don't want peace. Do you guys understand this? Go look this up. I'm going to exaggerate numbers here because I don't know the exact numbers. But guys, usually it's about a 10-to-1 ratio on prisoners that are let go, Palestinians versus Jewish people. At least a 10-to-1 ratio. Guys, that's not an equal. Okay? Do you guys realize that Hamas said that we'll have peace as long as Jerusalem's our capital? Well, that's not going to happen. People just hate the Jews because they're God's people. And I want you to know, as Christians, who are we? We're God's people too. We've been adopted into the family by God himself. Okay, let's go to chapter 9. Okay, so the edict has gone out. People are excited about Mordecai. And now we begin on this going out. Verse 1 says, now in the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, on the 13th day, when the king's command and edict were to be put into effect, on the day when the enemies of the Jews hoped to gain the mastery over them, it turned out to the contrary, so that the Jews themselves gained mastery over those who hated them. Hate's a very strong word, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
we'll say things like, ooh, I hate. Yes, I was going to say that. But the reality, a better way of putting it is I strongly dislike. Right? Because hate is something that is really, biblically, it is supposed to be held for what? Hating who? Satan. Hating Satan. That's it. We're supposed to hate him and love who? God. Okay? We're not supposed to embrace and love things of Satan, his sin, and all those things. This is why it blows my mind when Christians, when we dabble with things that the world offers that are strictly from Satan and say it's okay. When the Bible says run and stay away from it. It's amazing to me what we do sometimes. So we're at this month here. And here's what's really interesting, how God works. Guess what month it happens to be when the second edict is written? The same month the first one was supposed to go into effect. Okay? It's quite amazing how God works, isn't it? I mean, it's completely amazing that here we see that this is going into effect. The people are going to be able to defend themselves. They've gathered together throughout Persia to fight their enemies. And this gave them an advantage. They had strength in numbers, and rather, instead of being attacked individually. You guys remember when last year on October 4th, when Hamas attacked Israel, how did they do it? How did they do it? Surprisingly. Mm-hmm. And how did they do it? Did they attack a sitting army? No. Why not? Besides the fact they're cowards and other things, but why not?
They could lose.
That's right. Mm-hmm. They could lose. So now, the Jewish people are not going to be individuals to stand up against these enemies of the Jews. They're going to be a what? An army. That's right, Brother Ronnie. An army. Right? And this is important to remember. This is what that decree helps them to go about, helps them to be able to see how much they can go out, and they don't have to do it anymore as individuals. And it's amazing when you read through the scriptures. It's amazing how God works. But as you look through here, it says there in chapter 8, the last part of verse 16, it says the dread of the Jews, or the fear of the Jews, had fallen on all the people around. You guys remember as a kid, I can remember as a kid anyway, I was never really scared about what a teacher could do with me at school. I could get paddled, I could get in trouble, but man, did I not want who to find out. That's right. All the other stuff did, okay, all right, that's great, whatever. But if Dad found out, I knew I was in big trouble. Now, for the Jews, they're going to be in big trouble if they don't have some edict put out there. They need help. And again, God's providence is what did this. And yes, he used who? Mordecai, Esther, and Ahasuerus, right? He used all of them to get his will accomplished. See, this is why when you hear people say, well, God doesn't need us, there's only partial truth there. Yes, he doesn't need us. He didn't need us to create the world. He didn't need us for any of those things. But he needs us for a lot more than what we think. Could God still have done this? Yes or no? Yes. Could God still reach your neighbor tomorrow without you? Yeah. Highly unlikely, okay, if you read through the New Testament. It's not as likely as it would have been in the Old Testament. Okay, because we're supposed to give a what? A message. And the Bible tells us we have to hear that message. But it can happen. I believe that. I've heard stories of that. But the reality is that they're going to fight their enemies. That they have gotten now there. I love this. Look at verses 3, 4, and 5. And this is really cool. Okay? All right, this is really cool how God works. All right? Verse 3 says this in chapter 9 of Esther. Even all the officials of the provinces, the satraps, the governors, and those who were doing the king's business were supporting the Jews. Did you guys just hear what I read? Do I need to read it to you one more time? Everybody was helping the Jews. Everybody. Yeah, Ron.
Would some of those have been the people in charge of the army?
Yes, absolutely.
So the army is in for the Jews now instead of against them?
Absolutely. That's what it says there. Absolutely. That these people who had power and authority, they had a change of heart. Okay? The change of mind. You see, when people really think through, it's never a good idea to try to take on God. You know, it's not. Because the person or persons who always want to take on God, guess what will happen to them? They're going to lose. Right? They're going to die. Right? If they're lucky, they might get sent to exile somewhere, but odds are they're going to die. Right? Okay, so now we see this. I want to continue this here. Okay, because I think this is kind of, this is kind of interesting here. So, it goes on here, and we see what's taking place here. The officials that helped them, says, because of the dread of Mordecai had fallen on them. So they even knew who Mordecai was. They even knew where he stood and how he was part of this whole thing. Remember, verse 15, he was royalty. He had the royal signet. They weren't going to mess with this guy. I mean, yeah, they had the first edict to do what they wanted to, right? But they're like, no way.
Chuck, wasn't he the second in command of
Yes.
all the prophets? I mean, he had more authority than anybody.
Yeah. Didn't Haman
Other than the king himself.
Didn't Haman want all those?
Yes.
He did.
He actually had them.
Yeah, he did. For what? A very short period of time,
Yeah.
right? But absolutely, Carlos, that's exactly correct. This is what we're seeing here. So, is fear and dread a bad thing?
Depends.
Okay, it depends on what? Seriously, what does it depend on?
Circumstances.
Okay. Okay, right. And I know
Bad situation.
You don't want to live in fear being persecuted, for instance.
Okay. But we want to live in fear or respect for
Authority.
exactly authority. In this particular place, the authority of God that God placed down onto these provinces, onto these people, onto Mordecai. Right? This is the things that I want us to remember, that the people got involved to help them, and the people trusted Mordecai. They trusted what he would have done. And I think, Ron, you just said it, that you know what? These people would have been part of helping destroy the Jewish people. Okay? Jennifer and I knew a man. He wasn't young when we knew him. But he was 17 years old when he was forced to fight for the Nazis. He had no choice in World War II. We didn't know him until he was much, 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 much older. He was wounded in battle. When we teach people to hate, it can be devastating to a community, can it not? It's interesting because I want you to know that when I hear people in our society today talk about hate, I'm convinced that most of the people in our society don't have a clue what that means. I don't think they have a clue what it means. Usually in our society today, someone hates someone if they don't agree with them on a political viewpoint or a job or their clothes or whatever it might be. That's just simply not hate, but it's what? Disagreeing. And I think and a good example of this is that when you put a 1-year-old into a room with all kinds of skin colors, cultures, not one of them will go, I can't play with you because you're not like me. Not one of them. Oh, they're going to fight. You know what they're going to fight over? You're taking my ball. Okay? But they don't care. See, hate, in most cases, or at least it's the very beginning cases, is taught. Well, the sin ultimately, plays a major role in this, but it's taught. And the people and by the way, don't let the media tell you only certain groups of people hate, because that's a lie in and of itself. You guys know what I'm talking about. Lie in and of itself. And so here we see the Jews, they're hated only because, why? Because they were different. Remember that? They were different. Different customs, different rules, all these different things, King. We got to get rid of that. But God placed Esther in a powerful position. God placed Mordecai into a powerful position. And God took care of his people. And that's what I want us to remember. That's what it's truly all about. So here I've got a little bit for you to look at for chapter 9. We're not going to finish chapter 9 tonight. I'm hoping we'll get my computer back here pretty soon so we don't have to play, turn this board around, okay? I had to send a computer back in because it decided it wasn't sure how it was, if it was going to keep starting and stopping and starting and stopping, and that's all it would do. So I had to send it in to get it fixed, okay? Okay, so in Esther chapter 9, what we're going to see, and we've started with, is that the time has come, D-Day, for the Jewish people, okay? And we see that in the first couple of verses. And then I just read to you how God took all the hearts of the people in official positions and put them on the Jewish side, the Jews' side. Put them on the side of winning. Isn't it amazing how many people think they can beat God? You know, I heard, I'm going to tell you what, politics brings out the ugly in so many different ways, does it not? I mean, the ugly. And it's amazing how ugly it is. But one of the uglies it brings out is that people try to basically say, don't force your God on me. Your God can do nothing for me. But the reality is God does everything for us. We wouldn't breathe and exist without God. So we know here that the days come, the Jews have there, and Mordecai's got major influence on people. Major influence there in we read that in verse 4. That became greater and greater. I don't believe from reading in the book of Esther that's what Mordecai intended to do you? I think he just wanted to make sure the king was safe. Why would, if he didn't care if the king was safe, why would he say, hey, these guys are trying to kill you? He wouldn't have. He just would have seen the funeral procession go by and would have lost life. Right? But he didn't want that. He wanted to make sure that is there. So now if you look at verse 6, it says, at the citadel of chapter 9 in Susa, the Jews killed and eliminated 500 men. Okay? That may not seem like a lot compared to some of the battles we have today. But it very much was. Now here's I need to ask you for forgiveness because I'm going to butcher some things now, okay? All right, here we go. And they killed Parshadatha, Dalphon, Aspatha, Portha, Adaliah, Aridatha, Paramashta, Arasaiah, Aradai, and Baesadatha. Anybody want to repeat that? You're more than welcome to. Okay. The 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha. Okay. I mean, I want you to know that one of the criteria for children that we had, I had to be able to spell their names, and none of those names were going to be picked. Okay. So here we see these names of whose sons were they? Haman's. Okay. So 500 just in the city of Susa. So Haman has died. His sons has died. And it's interesting here. Look at verse 10. I mean, the end of verse 10. It says, the Jews' enemies, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder. Why not? There's not an answer biblically. I just want us to think about this. Why not?
It's kind of like if you're a baseball game and when the opposing team hits a home run, you throw the ball back out on the floor. They didn't want nothing to do.
Okay. Okay.
See, it's probably the reason Mordecai was able to pay the money, because we're going to plunder.
Okay, because Haman wanted to do so. Okay. Okay. Absolutely. Right. So, and if you think, think about this, right? And I think something else. Well, good.
I think that since this is all of his sons, they probably lived in the same house as Haman.
Probably pretty good. Yeah.
And guess who inherited all of Haman's stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Mordecai, basically.
And let's take another route for a second. Build on that. Let's talk about that for a second. Would you want something of your enemy sitting on your mantle above your fireplace?
It's a trophy.
Okay. And so but they didn't want it for whatever reason, right? We don't know why, but you're right, Carl. That's something because it doesn't tell us why. We just know that they didn't. So we can just guess how maybe they did or didn't. But the reality is, we know they didn't take it. This we can say for certain. They did not take it. So again, the whole idea here is that they could have taken anything they wanted. They could have taken it. And so as we see this here, these Jews, they're fighting. They are winning. They're defeating their enemies, and then they go back to the king. Look at verse 11. It says, on that day, the number of those who were killed at the city of Susa was reported to the king. And the king said to Queen Esther, the Jews have killed and eliminated 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman at the citadel in Susa. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is your request? So she's coming back for another request. It shall also be granted to you. And what is it your further wish? It shall be done. Be done. And Esther said, if it pleases the king, let tomorrow also be granted to the Jews who are in Susa, to do according to the edict of today, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the wooden gallows. So the king commanded that it would be done so, and the edict was issued in Susa, and Haman's 10 sons were hanged. Okay, we're not seeing repeat here when it says they're killed from verse 7, because they aren't killed until later, but it's given to us in verse 7. All right, now, she had to go back before the king, and I want you to notice she was pretty specific about this. If you notice here that, in fact, I'm going to read verse 15, and it says, the Jews who were in Susa assembled also on the 14th day on the month Adar, and killed 300 men in Susa, but they did not lay their hands on the plunder. So again, they didn't do it. She wanted another day. She got another day, but we don't know why she made this request, other than she made it, right? We don't know. Maybe it's because there was at least 300 more people in the city they need to get to, right? Didn't we read that 300 more were going to be killed the next day? We really don't have any idea, but they want to take care of that. Okay, what is vengeance, and why do we sometimes get vengeful?
Getting even.
Okay. Absolutely. That's probably the number one reason why we have vengeance, to get even. Okay. I want us to think about the Jewish people. I want you to know something. I don't think that if people were smart, that they would mess with the Jewish people. Do you guys realize their secret military stuff, how unbelievable it is? Guys, they infiltrated the higher circle of Iran. They blew up thousands of pagers. That's just in the last few months. But here's the thing.
Years in the making.
Yeah, years in the making, but in the last few months. But I want to point something out. Was there vengeance part of their plan? Maybe. We can't say for certain.
The whole war is kind of vengeance
Yep.
for what they did to them.
But here in this text, there's no vengeance. Because vengeance would have said, I'm taking your stuff and burning your house to the ground, and you're going to be in it. You're going to be in it, and I don't care what your body looks like when we're done. The rubble's just to stay on top of you. That's how much I'm going to get back at you. Jewish people didn't do that to these guys, did they? They left it. And they left, even though they had every right to do so. I view currently what we have going to take place in Israel. I think that we currently have more I'm defending myself and a little bit of vengeance mixed in, I have to agree. But at the same time, we see here a group of people that they weren't finished. See, that's the problem with Israel today. Everybody wants Israel to stop, except for Israel's not what? Finished. And they're a long way from being finished. And they need more time. You need more time to be finished, right? And here, this is what happens here. So the king gives Esther permission, and they kill at least 300 more people. But here's what's interesting here. This decree was only in one place. Did you catch that? This did not say in all 127 provinces. This just said where? In the capital, in Susa. That's it. Must have been a lot of them there. They've killed at least 800 of them. Right? A lot of them there. So what we're going to do, we're going to close there. Okay? We'll get to this rest of this here in just a little bit there. But we're going to talk about rest that the Jews do. We're going to talk about their celebration. Okay? But that won't be tonight. That'll be next week. Yes, sir?
I'm still thinking there's a little revenge when they went after the 10 sons.
Well, yeah, but that's true. There would have been some, but not for the plunder, right?
Specifically for a head to be hung.
Yeah, they took care of them, didn't they? But also, too, you're supposed to remove the evil from amongst you. So that's, but all we do know is, though, that God's in control, right? And that's the cool thing. All right, let's take a moment. Let's pray. Father God, I thank you for loving us. Lord, I just pray that we'll learn from this that you're in control. That you control our lives just as you control the situations here in Esther. Lord, use your word to guide our lives. Lord, I pray we'll let you guide our lives. And I thank you, Lord, for everyone that's here tonight. Bring us back here safely Wednesday to worship you and to learn more about you and fellowship with another. And I ask in your name. Amen.